Hello the YouTubes, Ash back once again. Another Facebook request has come in, and this time we have some French guy called Tim Burton, and he says, how about compare and contrast of Batman movies? Personally, I like the old camp ones. I've got no time for Christian Bale. Well, Tim, I'm here to tell you you're wrong, and I'm going to tell you why. So, Batman. I mean, this is something I could talk about for hours on end. I grew up with Batman. So, growing up, Adam West was my Batman. He was the only Batman I knew, in fairness. I didn't read the comics, I didn't know of any animated series that was on at the time or anything like that. As far as I was concerned, Batman was just a TV show. Obviously, it wasn't until I grew up and learned a bit more that Batman had been going on for a long time. In fact, yesterday was his 75th birthday. He's cracking on a bit now. I can see why they picked Ben Affleck to play him. Sorry, Ben. So the TV series and subsequent movie based on Batman in the 60s, I think it was, where Adam West was in the title role, is possibly the most camp thing ever put on television until Dale Winton rocked up. I'm not kidding. If you watch it back now, it's woeful. But what I really liked about it was the fight scenes when the pow and zap would come up on the screen. Oh, good times. You couldn't get away with that now. People would just laugh you out of the studio. So yeah, Adam West, he's still Batman in my eyes, but you know, if I took the time out to go back and watch the show, I would probably gouge my own eyes out. So I'm going to keep it up here that in my head, Adam West's Batman was fantastic. Don't say another word on it. I don't want my dreams shattered. Fast forward a few years to the arse end of the 80s, and Tim Burton signed up to direct a live-action Batman movie. I would like to have been the age I am now, and as much of a Batman fan as I am now, back then, so I could understand what was happening, because apparently there was a lot of fuss about Michael Keaton being cast as Batman. At this point, he'd only really done comedies, and he's quite a short guy, and Batman is a big framed beast of a man. So a lot of kick-off about it. Turned out well though. You can't argue with that. And I can't stand Tim Burton. I give him a pass on Batman and Batman Returns, and a slight pass on Beetlejuice, but everything else he does can get to fuck. So not only did we have Michael Keaton as Batman, we had Jack Nicholson as the Joker, and I am sure that he was more sane as the Joker than he is now as Jack Nicholson. So obviously with Tim Burton at the helm, it was going to be dark, it was going to be slightly gothic, and that's exactly what we got. But at the same time, it had elements of campy fun. Not as camp as Adam West, but it was in there a little bit, particularly Jack Nicholson's the Joker. He was a bit over the top and a bit manic and a bit cartoonish, but he's a fucking clown. He's supposed to be like that. As I said, back then I wasn't a massive Batman fan, I wasn't a massive movie geek. I was 7 years old or something like that. What do you expect? But I did enjoy that film a lot. Michael Keaton, a damn good Batman without a doubt. Definitely not the worst Batman. We'll get on to him very soon. That's just a clue who I'm talking about. But imagine that with pointy ears. Tim Burton and Michael Keaton teamed up again for Batman Returns, and a lot of people say this is better than Batman, but for me it's not. Possibly because it doesn't have the Joker in it, but mostly because Danny DeVito as Oswald Cobblepot / the Penguin freaks me out. He's horrible. Like, the makeup effects they did on him was superb. Thinking about it makes me cringe. We also had Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, and I'm not going to argue with that. That was awesome. Again, costume design. Yes. God, I'm such a pervert. We got more of the same from Michael Keaton. The brooding, gothic, dark, troubled Bruce Wayne / Batman character. Another fine performance. Definitely worthy of the suit. But then things started to go awry. We had Joel Schumacher stepping into the director's chair for Batman Forever, bringing on board Val Kilmer as the Caped Crusader. Okay, I'm not sure how Val Kilmer got this part. He's a decent actor, don't get me wrong, but he's not a leading man, he never has been. He was Iceman in Top Gun, he wasn't Maverick. Having said that, he wasn't terrible, the movie wasn't great. It had gone a lot more down the camp route than Tim Burton's take, but it still hadn't gone all out shite. That comes next. In Batman Forever, we've got our first introduction to the Robin character in the movie universe. Chris O'Donnell played him quite well. We brought in Jim Carrey as the Riddler. Now, I was quite a fan of the Riddler because I liked him from the 60s TV show. And Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. Now, looking back, if you look at the makeup design on Tommy Lee Jones, someone has just got a rubber mask, cut it in half and stuck it on his face. There's no effort required. When you compare and contrast, Mr. Ashmore, between Two-Face in Batman Forever and Two-Face in The Dark Knight, they are worlds apart. Obviously, they are years apart, and the technology for CGI and prosthetics and whatever has moved on immeasurably. But still, he could have made a bit more effort with the Two-Face get-up. Which brings us on to... oh God, I can barely say it without choking on vomit. Breathe, deep breaths, deep breaths, deep breaths. Batman and Robin. Sorry. Back again was Joel Schumacher, and he had been taking some kind of mental crazy pills when he decided to go ahead with this. Stepping into the suit this time is George Clooney. Oh, don't get me wrong, I like George Clooney. He's done some fantastic work. From Dusk Till Dawn is still one of my favourite films. But when you have a guy who does wobbly head acting like George Clooney, the last thing you need is big ears on him, because this is all you get. And it's so distracting. I remember the trailer, you have a silhouetted shot, the bat symbol, backlit with light, beams of light forced through it, and then you've got Batman, Robin, and I think Batgirl's in there as well, running towards the camera, and all you can see is George Clooney's wobbly head and then the ears flapping in the breeze. But that is the least of this film's worries. I cannot believe that I have a Batman movie on my worst films of all time list. Nothing is good about this film other than the fact that it's Batman. Everything else is shite. Arnold Schwarzenegger is Mr. Freeze. I love Arnie. Who doesn't love Arnie? Anyone who grew up in the 80s loves Arnie. This was a career killer. Uma Thurman. Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy. You would think she'd never acted a day in her life. What the actual fuck was going on with this performance? Chris O'Donnell back as Robin. Can't really say much more about it than Chris O'Donnell is back as Robin. Alicia Silverstone rocks up as Batgirl. Now, at the time I had quite the Alicia Silverstone crush, but even then, just no. Everyone involved with this film should have had like a month-long bath afterwards to wash the entire experience out of their system. Bat nipples. What more needs to be said? Nipples on the Batsuit. What were they thinking? So after that steaming pile of shit, Batman disappeared for a while. We were just left with the animated series, voiced by Kevin Conroy. Now if you want a definitive Batman, that's probably the one you want to look at, because he gets that perfect every time he does it. So yeah, Kevin Conroy, although he's just a voice, he is Batman. Similarly, Mark Hamill is the Joker. He absolutely encapsulates everything that you would expect from that character just in his voice work. The manic laugh, the crazy pitch in his voice, everything. Perfect. Fast forward to 2005 and we have a reboot. Christopher Nolan has cast Christian Bale in what is going to be called Batman Begins, and the world loses its shit because Nolan comes out and says, I'm going to do a really gritty, dark, realistic take on the Batman series. And everyone just thought, that'll never work. It's a comic book movie. It's meant to be fun. Wrong! Batman Begins was the kickstart of the comic book movies as we know them today. Everybody has tried to emulate the formula ever since. It's only recently where Marvel have realised they can go back to fun and campy and people will still queue up around the block for tickets. But before Marvel came along and created everything that I talked about yesterday, if you want to look back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe video, before then, everyone was just trying to copy Batman Begins. Christian Bale was an inspired choice for Batman for me. That guy commits to his roles. You've only got to look at The Machinist to see how far he'll go to make it look right. And not only did he do that, they asked him to bulk up a bit for Batman after he'd done The Machinist. So he went from being absolutely stick thin, like skeletal thin, to being overweight, too muscly to be Batman. And he did that in a matter of months. And then he had to lose the massive muscle he put on to be Batman, to skinny back down to become an acceptable size of Batman. That's just crazy when you think about it. The one issue I did have with Bale as Batman was he does have a very distinctive kind of lisp. Now, putting on a cowl and leaving that part of your face visible only really works if you have quite an anonymous looking face. When you have a distinctive jawline and a very noticeable lisp like Christian Bale, it's not very convincing. Having said that, this exists in a world where Superman thinks he can don a disguise by putting on some NHS specs and parting his hair the other way, so you can let it slide. Other brilliant casting within Batman Begins is of course bringing in Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, however you want to say it, Ken Watanabe as the decoy Ra's al Ghul, Michael Caine as Alfred the Butler, get in there, and of course Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon. Who doesn't love Gary Oldman? One other minor blip on Batman Begins for me, this is a retrospective blip of mine because at the time it didn't bother us, but now you have to endure little tiny baby Joffrey. Keep an eye out in the Narrows, a young Jack Gleason pops up, and all you can see when you look at it now is Joffrey, and you just want to slap him even though he's only about 7 in Batman. Sorry, Jack Gleason, by the way. Seems like a really nice guy. I've watched an interview with him and he seems really down to earth, really good fun, but his face is forever Joffrey. He's fucking... So now we come to the big one, the one that's going to make my case for Christian Bale as Batman. And it's not really about Christian Bale being Batman, but this is the definitive Batman movie, The Dark Knight. Incidentally, the first Batman film did not have Batman in the title. Again, something else that kicked off a trend, with obviously the follow-up being Dark Knight Rises and then the Superman film being called Man of Steel. It doesn't matter what it's called as long as the film's good. Christian Bale returns as Batman, but obviously we all know that this film belongs to Heath Ledger as the Joker. Now, I'm a massive fan of the Joker. He is one of my favourite characters in the world of anything ever, anywhere. Definitely my favourite villain of all time, beating out Darth Vader and everybody else. And when I heard, like everybody else, when I heard that Heath Ledger was going to be the Joker, my heart sank. Guy from 10 Things I Hate About You, the guy from A Knight's Tale. No, not the Joker at all. So fast forward a year when they've actually made the film and released it, and here I am, sat down to a nice big plateful of my own words, because Heath Ledger was phenomenal. The question is, was this film great because Heath Ledger was great, or was this film great because Heath Ledger was great and he died before it was released? A lot of people are making that argument that it was only as good as it was because people were upset about the death of Heath Ledger. But that, honestly, that doesn't matter. You take that tragedy out of it, it was still a fantastic film, brilliantly acted, superbly directed, absolutely A-star from start to finish. And following on from what I said before, we had Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent / Two-Face, and the makeup effects on Two-Face were just out of this world. The first time you see him and he turns his head and his face is gone, there's like literal holes in his face. All I could think of was, how have they got that in here with a film of this certificate? It made my stomach turn, and I was thinking, like, surely that's got to beef this up to at least a 15. But then Christopher Nolan wasn't done yet. He had another one in his back pocket, The Dark Knight Rises, bringing in Tom Hardy as Bane. Tom Hardy did something very similar to what Christian Bale did for this role, beefed up massively. We saw him in Warrior leading up to this film, and he'd become an absolute machine. And then he just bulked on top of a bulk and just became enormous. In the comics, Bane is considerably bigger than what he is in the Dark Knight Rises. But obviously, Nolan had grounded these films into a believable reality. So we couldn't have a guy who has this crazy venom stuff pumping into his veins that makes him grow to twice the size. Plus, they tried that in Batman and Robin, and we all know how that turned out. Granted, they completely killed the character anyway by turning what Bane is essentially is Batman's equal, but a little bit stronger, like mentally just as sharp, and made him completely brain dead. Whereas they kind of hit a balance with Dark Knight Rises. He was almost as clever, definitely bigger, a lot stronger, had the same kind of training as Batman had, definitely a worthy adversary. And then they went and ruined it by making him a puppet. At the time, the first time I saw The Dark Knight Rises, I came out with a massive grin on my face, lauding it to everyone that it was better than The Dark Knight. Looking back though, with objectivity, it's not even close. There are massive gaping plot holes left, right and centre in The Dark Knight Rises. Like how when Bruce Wayne escaped the prison, did he suddenly get back to Gotham even though the entire city had been cut off, and he got there in 5 minutes and it's halfway around the world. That annoys the shit out of me every time I see it. And then there's the worst on-screen death ever. Marion Cotillard, who it turns out is Talia al Ghul, daughter of Ra's al Ghul. So she dies in the least convincing way ever. So she essentially dies in a car crash. They open the truck that she's in to see her lying there, just about to take her last breath, lying like that, and then all of a sudden she just... and then she's gone. What's with that twitch? We could see you were going to die, you didn't have to ham it up for us. That absolutely ruined the movie for me. It spoils it every time I see it. And then of course there's the end where Batman takes the bomb away from the city and it detonates and somehow he survives. Absolutely no explanation how that could be possible. Yes, we find out that he fixed the autopilot in the Batwing, but he had no time to get out of the Batwing. We see him in it and then in the next shot it blows up. So he hasn't ejected. Just doesn't make sense. I guess Christopher Nolan and co thought that we would just let these things slide because the film was so good. But when it's not quite as good as the movie that most people absolutely adore, these issues are going to be noticed and they're going to be marked against the rest of the movie. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Having said that though, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises, for me personally is the definitive Batman collection. The other films were fine, they're all fun, except obviously Batman and Robin, which needs to be put in a landfill site, burned, picked up again, dropped in the ocean, picked up again and shot into space, because it's that bad. The rest of them are worthy of the Batman title. I still watch them to this day. I've got them all on Blu-ray. Every so often I'll pop one in and just sit in my little Batworld. But coming up we have Superman v Batman Dawn of Justice, where they've installed Ben Affleck as Batman. And once again, the world lost its shit. People hate on Ben Affleck as a career almost. Fair enough, he's made some shite in his time. Let's look at Geely for example. The film that is reportedly so bad, I can't even bring myself to watch it out of morbid curiosity. But Affleck's really upped his game recently, in terms of acting, but more specifically in directing. But I know he's not directing this film. But when you become that much of a good director, you know a lot more what you want out of your actors. And I imagine that translates to knowing a lot more from what you want from yourself as an actor. And with Ben Affleck being a Batman fan anyway, he's a massive comic book nerd, he'll know exactly what that character needs to be because he's been reading it for years. So when you've got somebody who is pretty much at the top of their game and already knows exactly what's needed in the role, I can't see how it's going to go wrong. However, if I go back to my problem with Christian Bale with a distinctive lisp, Ben Affleck has a very distinctive arse chin, so again. But he's going to be in the film with the guy who parts his hair on the other side and puts glasses on and suddenly becomes anonymous, so it's not going to be so much of a big deal. But on the subject of this movie, the casting choices have been pretty weird. So I'm not sure how this film's going to go. I'm really excited for it because of the casting choices, if I'm honest. Affleck as Batman, for example, but more importantly, Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. Who saw that one coming? Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Jason Momoa as Aquaman. That's going to be pretty special. So the acting alone has got me excited for this film. More curious than excited, but it's got Batman in, it's a comic book movie, I can say excited. But back to the point, definitive Batman. I'm going with Bale, just because the 3 films he were in were all absolutely superb. Yes, they lost their way a little bit towards the end with The Dark Knight Rises, but it was still better than any of the other ones from Joel Schumacher or Tim Burton. My opinion. Also, there was no shark repellent in it, so it beats Adam West's Batman movie. So there we have it. Let me know what you think. Who's your Batman? Which is your favourite Batman movie? Was your Batman in your favourite Batman movie? Because there is a possibility here that your favourite Batman movie and your favourite Batman were 2 completely separate entities. Sound off in the comments below. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, tell your family, don't tell me mum, and I'll see you next time.